We are ready. Thank you so much for being here. It's a great honor for us. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I assume that I'll just get started, right? Yes, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for extending the invitation to me to present at the Summerhill Festival of Childhood Online at the International Democratic Conference 2021. My name is Iwan Syahril. I'm the Director General for Teachers and Education Personnel in the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology in Indonesia. So I've been asked to share about the philosophy of our father of education, Ki Hajar Dewantara, and its relation to the educational transformation that we are doing in the past years. So I'd like to share screen. Hopefully now you can see the screen, right? Can you see the slide?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Ki Hajar and his background, then talk about his philosophy in a very simple and short. I think if we want to explore, I think we can continue later in our discussion, and then talk about how the current education transformation in Indonesia is inspired by this philosophy and our transformation, including during the pandemic. I'd like to start with this quote by Ki Hajar Dewantara, which was mentioned in 1935. We live in the period of transition. All around us, change is taking place. Here, the disappearance of a surviving custom saddens us. Elsewhere, renovation brings delight. Sometimes we set ourselves against a change in the old custom. At others, it is we who seek to do away from the antiquated and impending custom. Sooner or later, however, we come to realize how useless it is to fight against the inevitable and how everything comes in its time. Then we reconcile ourselves to the unavoidable because we know that what comes is not our choice, but sheer necessity. In a nutshell, I think this is where Ki Hajar main philosophy is all about. It's about change, and it's about how to make sense of change, the evolving nature of our world, and how we are always in this dilemmatic position, whether to feel sad and to feel happy at the same time. But Ki Hajar is trying to say that this is unavoidable and this is a necessity because it's its own time. So I will explore this later, the theme of change in Ki Hajar's philosophy. So a little bit about Ki Hajar Dewantara. Ki Hajar Dewantara was born in 1889, so in Yogyakarta in Central Java, Indonesia. At the time when the year where he was born, that was when the Eiffel Tower was inaugurated. The first edition of the Football League in England was first launched, and the winner was Preston North End. Russian flu pandemic happened and killed about 1 million people worldwide. And it was also the year where Vincent van Gogh painted The Starry Night. So this is just giving you the context of Ki Hajar Dewantara's time. And then, who was Ki Hajar Dewantara? Here, I'd like to show you his background is very rich, and he's been involved in a lot of different discourses, both cultural discourses, also the colonialism, also the intellectual, and finally his decision and determination to fight for his vision in education. Ki Hajar Dewantara was born in a royal family. Actually, he was considered in the line of a crown prince, but his father was disabled, so was not being able to resume as the crown prince. But he was an aristocrat, and his family loved art and literature. I think during that colonial era in Indonesia, that was quite rare. So he was privileged by his background. And then when he was a child, he was a religious student in a Islamic boarding school called Pesantren. And he studied with one of like the famous religious cleric, Kiai Sulaiman Zainuddin in Yogyakarta. And after he spent time in the Islamic boarding school, he went to be a student at a European elementary school system. This is a very like the top quality elementary school in Dutch East Indies at the time, and the quality is the same as the one in Europe. And the primary or the main target for students in the school is like the Europeans, not the natives. So very few natives, not only because they had like the status like the royal family and others, but also they had to be intellectually able to follow the education system here. And at that time, being in this elementary school, which was like 7 years of time, the length of the education here was considered already like the very top education at that time. So after Ki Hajar graduated from this ELS, the European Elementary School in Dutch East Indies, he then became a student in Stovia, which is a medicine school for the natives. So he was on track to be a medical professional or a doctor. But then he was starting to be more involved in the spirit and the vision of freedom, of like he started to ask questions about his own people, the native people, and the relationship with the European, especially the Dutch. And then one of like the results was he very involved in like the groups of like Indonesians to start to think about becoming an independent nation. He did not graduate from Stovia because of, because he was often sick, but also another version was because he protested too much. So the Stovia board was not happy with him. So then after that from the Stovia, he became a young journalist. So he wrote a lot of articles and again, like try to share like the spirit of freedom, the vision of freedom of independent nation to Indonesians. And he then became a politician. He was one of the founders of the first Indonesian political organization called the Indonesia Party. That was in 1912 to 1913. And this was like the very first political organization that explicitly mentioned that their vision is to have like an independent Indonesia. And he wrote, when he was the member of this political organization, he wrote an article in 1913 that angered the Dutch because the title of the article was If I Were the Dutch. And at that time, the article criticized the Dutch independence celebration in Dutch East Indies in Indonesia, because Ki Hajar juxtaposed the reality that how come you celebrate your independence when you are in your colony? So it's kind of like a very contradictory reality that asked by the Dutch. And he wrote this article and it was published. And then the Dutch was angry and then punished him. Then he was exiled to the Netherlands from 1913 to 1919. And during this time when he was in exile in the Netherlands, he started to be more involved and also interested in education. He got his diploma in education in the Netherlands. And this was his transformation to become an educator, because he then saw that to be an independent nation, you have to cultivate the more like educated people. So education is the key to an independent Indonesia. So this was his belief. And then when he came back to Indonesia after the exile, he founded Taman Siswa, or the Garden of Students, the name of his school, Taman Siswa, in 1922. And since then, he consistently became the educator until the day that he died. He was consistent to be an educator. And talking about his school, the Taman Siswa, the Garden of the Students, this school is very much about how students should be cultivated holistically, not only from the cognitive, but also from the affective and also physical, and also the spirit. So in Taman Siswa, and it was in 1922, but the way that the education was conducted in Taman Siswa is very much based on like the progressive ideas. Ki Hajar is very much influenced by Froebel, Montessori, Tagore's ideas, and he contextualized these very progressive ideas that he learned when he was in exile in the Netherlands, especially Montessori and Froebel, and contextualize those ideas into something that is culturally more accessible, more relevant to the Indonesians, especially in the Javanese context. And then Ki Hajar thought that, like, especially Montessori is the educator that he felt very much aligned with the independent or freedom spirit. So previously, Ki Hajar wanted to fight for an independent Indonesia to be an independent nation. And he saw the connection with the Montessori's philosophy, that this is really how education should be. This is how we develop people to have the spirit of freedom. So because in Montessori, the teacher is following his or her observation about the child. So the curriculum, let's say, is following the child, not the child following the curriculum. While Froebel, to him, is more like it's a spirit of like a happiness and a joyful learning, and it's very like full of imagination. So he also likes this idea. So if you see like how teaching and learning is conducted at Taman Siswa, and especially the name is the Garden of the Students, meaning like it's supposed to be like a very happy, joyful, and full of like imagination, but at the same time following the nature of the child. So this is in a nutshell what Taman Siswa looks like. And then I mentioned earlier about the influences in Ki Hajar Dewantara's philosophy of education. First is little Frederick Froebel. I already mentioned, and Ki Hajar thinks he's a romantic. He's like understands like the spirit of the children, imagination, and using play in learning. And Montessori, Ki Hajar thinks this is like a center on the concept of freedom, because you have to really understand the child, and then the educator makes the lessons around the child. And then Tagore later on also interacted with Ki Hajar, and also influences Ki Hajar's philosophy of education. What is interesting to me, especially personally, is that both Montessori and Tagore, because while Froebel already passed away when Ki Hajar was born, right? But Montessori and Tagore, they were both still alive. Although they inspired Ki Hajar, but they also observed and also heard what Ki Hajar was doing. So both of them, Montessori and Tagore, visited Ki Hajar School, Taman Siswa in Yogyakarta. Tagore visited in 1927, and Montessori visited later in 1940. So they were impressed by what Ki Hajar was doing, and they made the travel. And at the time, it was quite a difficult travel around the world. But they made the effort to travel to Taman Siswa and to see what Taman Siswa was doing and what Ki Hajar was doing. And Tagore was even like more, the connection was even stronger, because then after Tagore came back to India, And Tagore built like some kind of relationship with Ki Hajar, like exchange of the students, and Tagore even copied one of like the room, like the art room in Ki Hajar's school in Taman Siswa in Sanimitekan in India, and then that was like a very like humble interaction between Tagore and Ki Hajar. But they exchange ideas after that, but we feel like this is something that even like many Indonesians did not realize that Ki Hajar was actually interacting with like the global top educators around the world during his era. So what is Ki Hajar's philosophy of education? There are a few points here that I want to highlight. The first one is holistic education. Ki Hajar emphasized that you need, in education, you need to see the child as a whole. It's not about educating the mind, but also educating the heart or the soul, educating the spirit or the willpower, and educating the body. So this is like a totality of education and must be done in a balance. And when an education system or process can do this in a balanced way, the holistic education, and this will lead to the wisdom. So in Ki Hajar's philosophy, whatever disciplines that you're studying, at the end of the day, education should be about creating wisdom as the product of this education system or process. So it should be, yes, you need to like a sharpen mind intellectually, but you also need to have like a very humble heart and also the soul. But what's interesting here, Ki Hajar underlined the spirit or the willpower, because it is very important to have this willpower. It's useless when you have a sharp mind and also a good heart, but then if you don't have a willpower, that will create like a very weak spirit for us to do anything, basically. And also the other part is the raga or body. So this whole thing is part of the what schools, educators need to be doing in the process of learning. And the child-centered is already, as you know, because of the inspiration from the Montessori. Ki Hajar observes that yes, for Froebel is trying to understand like the spirit of like children with full of play and imagination, but Froebel still designs like the lessons and then ask the children to follow that. But Montessori is different. So I think the inspiration from Montessori makes Ki Hajar is a very strong in terms of the child-centered approach. He uses the term berhamba kepada sang anak, which is quite controversial because berhamba means to worship. Some people mistakenly think this is just like violation, especially religious communities in Indonesia think about, oh, this is like when you worship God, you cannot worship others, you just worship God. But Ki Hajar uses this term to show a strong disposition that as an educator, as a teacher, we need to have a strong disposition to serve the child. Serving the child is the ultimate purpose of why you are a teacher. And this was written in the core principle of Taman Siswa in 1922. And to me and many of people who follow it, this is very like transformational, because the child-centered education or student-centered education was actually already there in our philosophy of education since early 1900, especially by Ki Hajar. So, and this is actually should be like the foundation of the Indonesia's philosophy of education. And Ki Hajar uses this ecological approach. There is a combination between nature and nurture. Ki Hajar believes that yes, each child is unique because they have their own nature. They're created with like uniqueness. Each individual is unique. Even the twins, they are unique. No identical twins in terms of even like they're identical by DNA, but in terms of their character and everything, they are no twins are completely alike. So the role of the teacher or educator is to guide each child to be the best of their version. Ki Hajar uses the analogy of like as a in agriculture, because Indonesia is a very much an agricultural society. So Ki Hajar uses this analogy that a teacher is like a farmer. If the farmer receives the seed of paddy, then you need to cultivate these seeds to be the best paddy that it can be. If the farmer receives the seeds of coffee, then the farmer needs to grow this seed to be the best coffee that it can be. Do not grow paddy and then expect it to be coffee. That will never happen. And do not grow coffee with the way you grow paddy. Then the coffee will not grow well because it's a different kind of approach. So a teacher, just like a farmer, should then assess what kind of seeds, what kind of uniqueness that each child has, and then needs to around the child, set the lessons that can make the child to be the best version of he or she is. So that is like the philosophy of like the nature and the nurture. So understanding the nature of the child is very important before then the teacher can nurture the child to be the best version that it can be. And of course, this is easier said than done because this is much more difficult, much more complex, but this is actually how it should be. And Ki Hajar already explained this when he established Taman Siswa in 1922. And then Ki Hajar, using the combination of the Froebel and the Montessori method, and then developed something that called Among method. And in a nutshell, it is captured in his very famous slogan, Ing ngarso sung tulodo, ing madio mongon karso, and tutpuli handayani. Meaning that when leading in the front, the teacher needs to be the role model for the students. And when in the middle, the teacher is to motivate the student and building the willingness. And when at the back, the teacher empowers students to be independent. So there are three keywords here that first, the teacher needs to be a role model. Role model is like the moral obligation of a teacher. And then after that, the teacher needs to be a motivator, to build the willingness, to strengthen the willpower of the students. So then the students can continue whatever the condition, the limitation, everyone can have like the spirit of an excitement to continue learning. And then finally, the teacher's job is to empower the student. So at the end of the day, the teacher, also the student, becomes independent. So in Ki Hajar's philosophy, the end of an education process is to produce independent learners. And this is maybe like in our concept at the moment, it's like self-regulated learners. And another part in Ki Hajar's philosophy of education is that the pedagogy should be culturally relevant. Ki Hajar believes in differentiation will increase the efficiency. Just like when a teacher should understand the nature of the child and then builds the lesson around that. And then at the same time, Ki Hajar is also saying that the way that we conduct teaching and learning should also be situated within the cultural realm and also the national realm of the child, of the society where the child is situated. So understanding the local elements, both the cultural and social, is also important in how teaching and learning is conducted. Now, another important concept in Ki Hajar's philosophy of education is the three sentra pendidikan, or the three inseparable centers of education. Ki Hajar believes that education does not only happen in school. There is the synergy between the school and the family and the community, which centers around the love for the children to make sure that they grow well holistically. So that's the responsible of the education does not only happen in the hands of the teachers, but it needs the collaboration between the family and the community. So these three centers become inseparable in how actually the society provides education to the children. And I think in the pandemic, this is, I think, growing the significance, and suddenly the involvement of the family and the community in terms of how we can help the teaching and learning and how to ensure the continuity of learning can still happen. And I think from Ki Hajar's point of view, this should actually happen not only because of the pandemic. This is how it should be. Maybe it's also captured in one of the famous quote, like, it takes a village to educate a child. So it's not just like the school, but I think the beyond the school walls and the school complex, there are a lot of things that are happening that also part of the education of the children. Now, my first quote that I shared with you at the very beginning of my presentation is about Ki Hajar's idea about change. And I would argue that the core idea in Ki Hajar's philosophy is actually about change, either change in education or change in terms of culture or our society. So change is at the center. And I think Ki Hajar is trying to understand and to make sense how change is and how we should navigate change. So Ki Hajar has his principles of change. It's called trikon. The first one is continuitet or continuity. The second one is convergency or convergence. And the third one is concentris or concentric. What does it mean? The first one is continuity. Ki Hajar is saying that when one culture interacts with another culture, it must not leave its own cultural roots. In other words, when we cannot just change like something like radically, it needs to have like its connection with the cultural roots. Either like have a deep reflection about what has happened in the past and how is it still going on when we want to create a transformation of change without losing its identity. So it's very important to still keep like the core identity even though there is a transformation. And the second one is convergence or convergency. Ki Hajar says that cultural exchanges should lead towards a unity in a universal realm. And here Ki Hajar is saying the universal realm is humanity. So yes, we can have like a lot of like strategies, a lot of processes in change, but at the end of the day, it should go towards like the same kind of direction, which is a more perfect humanity. So whatever it is. And the third one is concentric. So, okay, so now Ki Hajar says that all leads towards the same unity, which is the humanity, but each setting, each culture, each context has its own journey and story, just like the orbit of the planet. So continuity, convergence, and concentric. So these three main principles of change in Ki Hajar's philosophy. So if I may, I imagine Ki Hajar's philosophy, both in education and culture, like a bigger context, societal change, is more like a solar system. So at the core, the sun, where all the planets are circling, like towards the sun, is actually humanity. These are our core values, no matter what kind of culture that we have. This is the humanity, and it gives us the energy. It gives all the planets the energy. But each planet goes on its own orbit. They have like their own story. They're continuing their own journey. There's a continuity, and they're concentric. So they have like their own orbit. And each planet is different, is unique. They are not the same. We cannot expect the Earth will be like the Jupiter, or we cannot expect like Saturn to be like Mercury. They are their own unique, and they have their own strengths and weaknesses, but they have their own journey in this transformation of the whole thing. But the center is the humanity. So this is what I imagine when Ki Hajar talks about the child. In learning, they're all different, they're all unique. That's okay, they have their own orbit. We cannot push them to go to different orbits, because it will create a chaotic situation. It will be a chaos. So to have like a balance, we need to keep the identity, we need to keep their own orbit, and let them go with their own journey. Some planets circle very fast, some planets circle maybe a bit more slowly. Some planets maybe are a bit hot, some planets maybe a bit cold, and it's okay, because they have their own story, they have their own context. So I think when we talk about change in Ki Hajar's philosophy, we need then to ask the questions, the big questions. What is our vision, our shared vision for the world? What kind of society that we want to create? And if I want to put in one sentence the philosophy of Ki Hajar in terms of change, I think he was saying something like, in our internal transformation, the process of change, there is a sense of continuity and concentric. We should interact and collaborate externally towards a more perfect humanity or convergence. Yes, we're doing our internal process of change, but at the same time, we should interact and collaborate externally towards a more perfect humanity or convergence, because at the end of the day, it's all about a more perfect humanity. So now I'd like to continue with the connection between Ki Hajar's philosophy and the current transformation of education in Indonesia. Ki Hajar inspires, of course, a lot of educators in Indonesia, and his slogan, one of like the part of the motto, the Among method, Ingarso Sung Tulodo, Ing Madio Mangun Karso, and Tut Puri Handayani. And Tut Puri Handayani is part of our Ministry of Education's logo. And Tut Puri Handayani, like the translation is basically, literally means at the back, the teacher should empower the students to be independent, or actually the keyword here is to produce independent learners, people who are independent, people who have who are emancipated, right? So I'd like to use the word emancipated. I think it's the closest I would say to think about what Ki Hajar means in terms of the word merdeka, emancipated. So Merdeka Belajar is our motto at the moment, or it's emancipated learning. It means that we want to create an ecosystem that is like full of giving the autonomy and focusing on how we can produce independent people in our education system. And emancipated learning, this is the ministry's philosophy in educational policy. We have a lot of policy, but at the end of the day, it's all about how to make our students become independent learners. This is just like give you like a more like detailed explanation about Merdeka Belajar. The goal basically is about the students, high quality education for all students. There is the pillar of the access, the higher enrollment, and the process should be high quality, and also the distribution should be equal in terms of who everyone should get high quality education process, so then they can get good outcomes. And the one of like the important ingredient here is at the top left corner, which is agency, influence, support from all stakeholders, including students and learners. So there is a term of gotong royong in Indonesia's culture, in Indonesian culture. The spirit of gotong royong is how we believe we can make a leapfrog in our education transformation. Gotong royong basically means that everyone collaborates with each other, but there is a special element of, there is a sense of social empathy and social responsibility that like our problem is our collective problem. So it's not just because someone already ahead and then they can just like forget about the rest of the community. No, when they are ahead, actually they have like they need to have like the social empathy and then the responsibility that, hey, let's go forward together, let's progress together. So this is actually core in many of the cultures in Indonesia, and we believe with this spirit that we can finally we can do the leapfrog in our education transformation, especially with the spirit towards the same goal, which is Merdeka Belajar, which is about creating the independent learners, the emancipated learners for our education and for our society. And the goal of Merdeka Belajar, I mean, I don't want to go to the one in the middle because it's a bit too complicated, but the one that I want to highlight here is this is the end goal, that first is to provide learning as a joyful experience. It's like the playful, just like the Ki Hajar's philosophy, like the garden of the students idea. And then it's an open system, stakeholders collaborate. That is spirit of gotong royong. Teachers as facilitators of learning, competency and values-based pedagogy. So it's holistic kind of education. It's focusing on the students or learner-centric approach, more personalized. Technology-enabled learning, because this is the era where we have to use technology. Industry-relevant programs, because to understand the society and make the education process also relevant. Freedom to innovate, because we have a lot of like different contexts in 17,000 islands in Indonesia, or hundreds of more than 500 local authorities in Indonesia. So the way that we can have a lot of good ideas that applicable to different contexts is to have the freedom to innovate and the agency of all stakeholders. So it's not just the one or two stakeholders, but everyone contributes to the transformation. This is an example how, for instance, in my Directorate General in teachers and education personnel, the way that we think about our program, it's at the top, it's all about the students. So no matter what kind of program that we create for our transformation, and here I give you an example for teachers and education personnel, we have to have a vision and communicate this all the time, that whatever that we do, we should ask, how is it going to help the students to be better? How is it going to help the students to grow holistically? How does it help the student so then they can be independent learners? And my core programs in Directorate General is about transforming educational leadership, transforming the pre-service teacher education, developing center of excellence for teacher learning, empowering educational communities, and revising regulations, improving governance. And in each of these programs is like the top 5 big programs. In each of these 5, the question is always about how does it help the students? So this is not easy to do, but because in the past, it's all about, yes, we have trained 100,000 teachers. So it's good, and the process is accountable and everything. But now we need to extend the question a bit more, because at the end of the day, it's not about the adults, but it's about the students. One of like the Ki Hajar's, like this is a few years before he passed away. He was not happy with the direction of our education system back then in 1956. He says, nowadays, we can see that schools do not give enough encouragement to students to pursue knowledge because every day, every quarterly, every year, students are constantly threatened by the evaluation system and by a recognition system that is too intellectualist. Our children and young people cannot learn in peace because they are being intimidated by the high stakes exams. They are not learning for the development of their psyche. On the other hand, they learn to get high grades for their school report or to simply get a diploma. On this matter, we, the school leaders, together with the Ministry of Education and Culture, should find solutions how we can eradicate this exam cult and this diploma hunting disease. Ki Hajar reminded us a bit like 11 years after our independence, when we're still building the foundation of our education system, that we should not forget that education should be about the holistic growth of the child. It's not about the intellectual aspect of it. So unfortunately, in Indonesian education system, the orientation for more too much intellectualists, like Ki Hajar's criticism here, was still happening. And recently, we decided to break from that tradition. And then we changed the education evaluation towards more like the foundational skills, literacy, numeracy, and character. And we're doing this not for the high stakes for the students, but it's more like a survey and just like a sampling for the students. And the result is not about the students, but the result is more about to provide information to help the schools, which ones that need the most kind of help. And then the focus is no longer on the content, but it's more on the foundational skills, which is multi or applicable to all the disciplines. And I want to share a little bit about our flagship program in the Directorate General of Teachers and Education Personnel, which is one of the key priorities in educational transformation in Indonesia. It's called Guru Penggerak program. In a nutshell, it is a program to develop a student-centered school leaders. So what is the Guru Penggerak program? Guru Penggerak program aims at producing transformative school leaders by developing paradigm, behaviors, and practice that are student-centered. So I think this is a bit unique because usually the teacher professional development programs or leadership programs prior to this program was basically too technical. We did not touch the why aspect, the values aspect, the paradigm aspect. So we decided to design the program differently this time because we want to have school leaders who understand about the student-centered approach, not only the how, but the why. So in the changing the paradigm, the participants learn about the philosophy of Ki Hajar Dewantara, and they also think about other things such as the asset-based community development, meaning that not in the deficit mindset, but it's the asset-based, meaning that no matter what kind of limitations that they have in their context, but they can turn it into an asset and into different strategies to reach the same outcome. And then the other paradigm is to encourage inclusivity and social-emotional development of students and teachers, which is more the totality or the holistic approach in educating children. And we want to see the collaboration, more reflective processes, community of practice, and feedback, more like a culture. There is learning and feedback all the time, and positive and equal relationship among teachers and students. So there are 3 phases in the Guru Penggerak learning journey. The first one, like the first 1/3 of the program, is about how the educator is more like reflecting on the values, why he or she becomes a teacher. Oh, what kind of teacher do I want to be? And here they learn again about the philosophy of Ki Hajar Dewantara, and then they are asked to reflect and to contextualize them into their teaching practices. And then the second phase is, after looking at themselves, is about looking at it into the classroom. And here, based on their reflection on those values that they learned in the first third, so the second third of the process is about how to put those values into strategies to transform teaching and learning in the classroom. And the third phase is about transforming the school using those values. So how to make decisions, but when you make the decisions, it's not about just the effectiveness of the administration, but it's more about how to give like the best value to the students and their learning, which is again like not a common way in many of decision making in our school leadership. This is just like some stories from the Guru Penggerak program participants. This is a teacher from Sulawesi Selatan. He says, I used to think that students, I used to think students who are not able to achieve a certain standard are stupid students, until Guru Penggerak program introduced me to the philosophy of Ki Hajar Dewantara. I learned that every student has their own pace, needs, and backgrounds. As a teacher, I'm the one who needs to find better strategies for every student. So in other words, that before it was more like forcing the student to the standard instead of understanding the student and then trying to make adjustment or differentiation. Another teacher is from Aceh. She says, I never did reflection to the learning I did in the classroom before I joined the program. Besides, I got angry easily. Pendidikan Guru Penggerak has guided me to change the way I teach my students. I learned positive discipline theory that changes my approach to students become more positive. I no longer forbid my students to do anything without a proper explanation. Then I realized what I'm doing does not only change my students, but also myself. Reflection helps me to improve myself. This is another teacher from Bone in Sulawesi. He says, Guru Penggerak program has changed my mindset in teaching. Previously, I decided all the learning process by myself and never asked my students about their learning needs. Now I conducted a survey to my students to understand their learning preferences and needs so that I can serve them better. Now I can implement a more student-centered approach. What we're hoping is this. So as a program, and we have about 300,000 schools, a little bit more than that in Indonesia. So we hope that in a few years, by 2024, we can produce 400,000 of these kind of school leaders in Indonesia. This is the way that we think can be like the breakthrough, because in the past, we neglected school leadership. And a lot of teachers have been trained and they came back to school, and then the principals or school supervisors did not understand the progressive ideas. So these teachers who have been enlightened, then they were misunderstood, and then they were not able to practice these progressive ideas in their teaching and learning. So now we want to change this by focusing on the school leaders, and the school leaders, not only did they understand, but they can be the role model and they can be the coach for the other teachers. So the professional development for the transformation starts in school. It doesn't start in workshops outside the school, but it starts in the school. So the community of learners will start from school, and this will be more context relevant because the teachers will then use the problems that they face in their school as part of the text of the professional development in school. So they will be more relevant, the professional development, and led by their school principal and hopefully the school supervisor too. And so then it can respond to the needs of the children much faster than before. So the teacher doesn't need to wait for another semester to get a professional development, to figure out an answer of the problem that they're facing to serve the students better. So what about the pandemic? The pandemic has given us the opportunity. Yes, it has given us a lot of problems, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to reimagine and revitalize the education. There's a lot of things that we need to do, I think, to change the mindset of the teachers and also to make the adjustment with the pandemic. But we think the pandemic has given us an excuse to pause and reflect about what has happened before, and then what we can do to rebuild the education system, but also the teaching and learning processes, so that we can serve the children better. For instance, at the moment, we try to advocate to all the teachers, recommend to them to do diagnostic assessment and provide psychosocial support, differentiate their instruction and assessment so that they can address different students' learning readiness needs and interests as a result of the disruption during the pandemic. This is not easy, but we are trying to push a lot of learning opportunities for our teachers. For instance, we have the online learning module in our platform, and the data, this is more than 1.5 months ago. It's almost 2 months ago, actually. Already close to 100,000 educators have signed up. So now we believe the number at least have increased past 100,000 and hopefully can grow more. So then the teachers can learn ideas about how to personalize learning based on their students' context, which is another opportunity to be more student-centered. And the mindset challenge during the pandemic is not just the strategies, but also the mindset. For instance, to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, because the COVID pandemic situation keeps changing from time to time. A lot of uncertainties. Once we figure out how to adjust with current situation, and then next month the situation can change again and we have to make another adjustment. And now we are so used to the disruption, maybe this is good for the innovation culture. And to be a learner, because all teachers now are more used to learning from each other, which is fantastic. And technology has become more and more familiar to all teachers. And this has increased the opportunity for us to use technology for innovation. But at the end of the day, it's not about the technology. It's not about the strategy, but it's about the human beings around it. So come back to the Ki Hajar's philosophy. All this situation that we're dealing with, all the possible solutions and etc. Actually, what Ki Hajar was saying, this is the same. It's like the philosophy of change by Ki Hajar. Actually, all these systems, all these contexts, they're working in different ways. Just like this solar system, the planets are circling the sun in their own orbit. But actually, we are working towards the same goal, which is the highest human happiness, or in other words, the well-being. So I think at the end of the day, education is about wisdom, and it's about the well-being of the human beings. Thank you.
Is Maro here? Who will moderate it? If there's no one, I can help. So any questions? Jakob, you have something in your mind?
I will tell you, first of all, wow, it was so exciting. And I hear about what you are doing, I think the third time, and I feel like I want to cry all the lecture. It was so exciting. And I will think with you why I feel also now. I feel with like I crying, like my eyes is, and why it's happened. And I think you begin your lecture with a very interesting situation about the history. And we are now in the 100 years to Summerhill. And Summerhill was established in 1921. And Ki Hajar built his school in 1922. And all the progressive education began in this time of the end of the Spanish pandemic and the end of the First World War. And then come a lot of great ideas. And then you show that the leaders all over the world, the people that lead the education, was connected. And I can show you it's much more. It's like it was a network of people understand after the Spanish pandemic that they need to build a new kind of world. And then you come to what you're doing today. I jump, but what we are doing today. And we are today also, we are meeting one another. And you in Indonesia, what you are doing, it's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. And if I understand Ki Hajar, the main idea, and you show it's very beautiful with the slide about the universe, that our light, it's the same light all over the world. And the big goal is to make the world better. And yes, I think a lot of people forget. And they confuse and they begin to think how to make the world better for me. And if you do better for you than other people, you lose everything. And then you make a test and who is the best in mathematics. And that's something that I think so exciting to understand the different culture of all over the world and how much we are the same. And that's give me a lot of hope. And I think my feeling that I want to cry is that I thank you. Thank you. You give me so much hope. Thank you.
Pak Iwan, maybe I should introduce you to Yaakov. Yaakov is the initiator of this how do you say, international democratic community. Yes. So yes, Pak Iwan.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Jacob. That is very very generous of you. I hope that I represented Ki Hajar well, because there are a lot of I mean, his ideas are I try to capture like the essence of it. I mean, it's much more than that actually, but that's very generous of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there Yaakov is running a democratic school in Israel, yeah, Yaakov. If you could say a bit about how your school started and how the democratic education is doing, is something that you can share to Pak Iwan and to the rest of the audience here, Yaakov.
I don't know if Ian, I can call you Ian.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. I go after this lecture and learn much more about Ki Hajar. But when I go all over the world, I found in every culture one is a key people that people think is our teacher. And most of these, like you say, some of them, and like we are now in the conference of AS Neil, and all of them say the same light. They go with the light as you explain to different how to do it, but the light was the same light. How to make the world better, how to make human being much more happiness. And we in Israel, I found the first democratic school in 1987, and I call it democratic because the idea was I don't found the connection between what happened in school to what happened outside school, and I thought that school need to be similar to what happened outside school, and children need to. You cannot say to the children what to do, how to do, and check them if they done it, and tell them when they are 18, now choose your life. You prepare them not to choose, and then you ask them to choose. So what I try to do is to live democracy inside school, and we have like a microcosmos of democratic institutes, and inside the school, and the school students run the school, and everyone have a different learning plan, and it's become like a community that we think how we can live better. And today we have 40 democratic schools in Israel, but in 1993 we begin this conference. We begin to make IDEC, the International Democratic Education Conference, and today we have democratic school in more than 70 countries, and it's much more than 3,000, 4,000 schools that are all around the globe, and it's now after the pandemic, it's growing so fast that we don't know the number. Yesterday, Kageki from Japan say that only in Japan it exists now 500 democratic schools, so it's growing very, very, very fast. And the major idea that I think it's connected to what you are doing, we think how the world can be better, and I think this is the beautiful between the connection between all these 1,000 schools all over the globe. I today work in a college of teacher training in Israel, and all this college is now focusing about democratic education, and it's a very interesting situation because we're thinking about how to make a different way of training to teachers. And we work not only in democratic school like you, we work in traditional school, and it's very fascinating. It's so exciting to know that we have a very close colleague in Indonesia, and it's great.
Thank you so much. So, so in this College of Teacher Training, so the idea of democratic education is at the core of how you train teachers, and how they also and the expectation of them to be after they graduate.
Yeah, it's the idea that now I was 6-time advisor to the Minister of Education in Israel. So one of the Minister of Education, she's a very good colleague of me, and she became the president of this college, and we decide together that we are going and change the college because it's so important that the teacher training will be different. So we are only after 1 year there, and we hope that it will going and change very dramatically. But the idea is that we think that the teacher training college need to be like school in 2040. So the teachers need to come and live our goal. not to go and like the old traditional teacher training that it's like museum of history that study like 50 years ago. Go to the future, and they in this future they will make the teacher training, and most of this will connect also to very innovative schools around the college. So it will be like a ecosystem that connect schools and college, and we will glad to be in touch with you because we love international connection, and I think like Ki Hajar that I think about Ki Hajar when you say that he was in Netherlands in between 1913 to 1919, so he was all the first war in Netherlands. So he saw the world in the worst case, and something changed. And he also, when you say in the beginning of what he believed that change and necessary go together, I think the world today not understand that the change is necessary, and I think it must be connected to the globalization, or what we call localization, globalization. It's learn what happened in the world, make a change local. And that's, thank you.
Can I ask you a question, Jacob?
Yeah.
So one of like the toughest challenge in the transforming the teacher training colleges is the teacher educators themselves, right? So when you decided to make like our vision now should change, what was the strategy to make like the other teacher educators, maybe they're still, like you said, like the orientation is like the museum, like in the past, right, instead of the future. How did that transformation process go?
It's very interesting because it's exactly what you're saying. These people, the professor in the university, that they are teach what they teach the new teachers for a long time, they don't want to change. But I tell you what I believe, and we are in the middle of what I'm saying now. If you go deep with everything, take any kind of education, science, and go deep, you will find the light that you was talking about. So, but the problem is when you stop to learn, and when you stop to learn, and when you, for example, only begin to teach, you are a teacher now, so you stop learn. When you stop learn, immediately the light is closed. So what we do now, we help the professors in the university begin learn again, to learn from one another, to learn in the internet, to go to a conference all over the world, try to open their mind. It's difficult. It's difficult because the old traditional say you learn in the beginning and then you can stop to learn and only teach. And this is terrible situation. So we're dealing with this situation. I hope it will be, next time that we will meet, I can tell you that we succeed. Today, you meet me in the middle, because in Israel now, it's the beginning of the year. And now all the summer, I work with the professors, and tomorrow, in Sunday, Monday, they begin to meet the first time their student, that this is a student that want to be a teacher, and that will be very, very exciting.
I see. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, how you deal with this?
Okay, sure, thanks. We are also dealing with that. I mean, at the moment, we haven't, we're going towards that direction. But because one of like the puzzle in Indonesia is the scale, right? The scale is just like enormous. So the stakeholder engagement is one of like the most challenging part in Indonesia. We have just like the local authorities who have like the autonomy to govern education. We have like 514 local governments, right? And that is that is too much to do stakeholder engagement. So I think it takes a while for us, I think, compared to other countries. But the most important part, the vision is already there, and I think we're going back to our roots, to our like the philosophy of our father of education. So I think having this as the compass is very important compared to previously. I think it was not really clear or not really strong. So owning this orientation, I think, is fundamental. Yes, for the teacher in service, but also for the teacher education, the pre-service as well, including for the teacher educators. But yeah, I mean, our scale is just like one of like the interesting puzzles for us to deal with. But hopefully we're getting there.
Yeah, I think the scaling question is, my answer to the scaling is less is more. I will say, if you want to spread it very fast, you lose everything. But if you go in one place deep, and then it's spread by himself. I have a program, another program that we work now in Israel. Our demographic, it's growing very fast. We will double our people in Israel. We are very small. We are very small country. We are 10 millions very soon. But in 30 years, we will be 20 millions. So we build now a lot of new schools. New schools all over Israel. It's new schools, so we are focusing that the new school will be totally what we think about the future education. Because to change traditional school or traditional university, it's difficult. To build new one, it's quite easier. Because you plan the building, you build the building, you choose the principal, you choose the staff, and you build the school. It's not like you try to change traditional school that exists. So I think when you focus about the new one, then the new one will influence also about the old one. And that's the less is more.
That's interesting. I'll keep that in mind.
Thank you. Yes, you have more, Jakob?
I move it to you.
Okay, thank you. So we're just listening to you both your discussion, but it's very fruitful and interesting. Maybe we should give the chance to the other participants. Is there anybody who would like to share your thought or questions about this? I see someone is writing her thought. in the chat box. Oh, Badita, you want to share your thought?
Just would like to convey my acknowledgement. Gratitude Pak Iwan that like Yakov, I feel your sharing is very beautiful. I cannot stop crying hearing you explaining the philosophy. So it's all in our soil from the very beginning. Wherever we are as an educator, that we lost many years to bring our children, to give our children their rights. So thank you for let us remembering the Ki Hajar philosophy once more, and hopefully with all your the government create a program with the emancipated learning program, we can live it up again in our soil and create a more humanist children in Indonesia and in the world, and give more impact to the world. So thank you very much for this presentation, and also for Yakov.
I think it's there's a trouble network, so everyone's becoming very emotional, Pak Iwan. Okay, I see someone raise his hand. I cannot. Is it Pak Asradi? You have any question or thought to share?
Yes, Ibu Monica. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pak Iwan Syahril, for the insight. That was amazing. I feel like probably this is the answer of all the problems that we are facing in our education system in Indonesia. It's all about the teacher education. It starts from there, because I believe a great education always starts from the teacher. When the teacher is well developed and they are getting their opportunity to develop their creativity, their professional development, like what's happening today in Indonesia. And that's why I agree with all the ladies saying this is an emotional moment. I came back from Australia. I watched what's happening there. When the teacher, a very, very, we can call it funky teacher, because she wore one sock, another color, another sock, another color. And then in the class, there was one Aboriginal student not interested in learning. And what this teacher does, she came very closely to the teacher, to the student, just to make an approach. And this, Aboriginal student usually a little bit sometimes they feel left behind because they don't feel belong to the community in Australia. So I felt like the teacher is putting extra effort just to make the student feel happy, and even giving extra time after the class just to meet with the student and talk about why you're not interested in the learning in the class. And this is something that I feel, Pak Iwan, what we are bringing today with the Guru Penggerak program, with the Sekolah Penggerak, which is now being so, I feel, I've been observing all the things done by the teachers around Indonesia through social media, during your show with the teachers. They're amazing. They're putting great effort in making learning become lively again. Learning become real thing for a student. It's no longer like being a victim in the classroom. Because for all this time, students are the victim in learning. They're not having any authority at all. They don't have any freedom. And that's why the idea of Sekolah Merdeka, Belajar Merdeka is something that probably we've been waiting for. And thank you once again, Pak Dr. Iwan Syahril and Jacob, with your idea about the democratic education. Yes, this is what we need today. And I'm so glad to see this kind of community. I myself also develop a community of global educators. We start that from Indonesia, by one, and then after that we bring that to 7 continents around the world. Because after I traveled, I saw that Indonesian teachers, when they are given enough opportunities to grow, and to show what they are capable of and what they can do, they can actually perform so amazingly. I've ever brought Indonesian teacher from Indonesia. I trained, and then I brought them to Morocco, and that was just amazing. So that's why, yeah, sorry, Bu Ira, but yes, Indonesian teachers are amazing.
Thank you, Pak Asradi, because we have to stop because we have another speakers coming up. Maybe Pak Iwan Syahril, you have your last statement to make before we close the event.
Just I'd like to share the thank you for all the appreciation, and I think if you are inspired by today's presentation, I think you'll be even more inspired if you read Ki Hajar by yourself, because I think it's a lot of amazing things that our father of education had shared like long time ago. I mean, he is definitely ahead of his era, and he was also approaching the process just like his own philosophy. Like, he did not try to push like his ideas like forced to the society who did not really who were not really ready at the time. I remember like there was a story that some like when we were already independent, right? I think a few years after our independence in early 1950s, he was ridiculed by young people at the time, and then he said, "Don't worry, that's okay. That's everyone can have judgment about me. Let them be like that, because everyone has their own orbit. It means that in terms of learning, making sense of things, just because you already are considered as the top educator, and therefore that you can force your judgment." But he was saying that at the end of the day, I'm just like a regular Indonesian that I'm a regular Indonesian that I'm fighting for Indonesia with the Indonesian way. So even though Ki Hajar was like super respected by the founding fathers, like all the top people, but he was saying that when people ridiculed him, he was not angry, because those people did not understand, and the learning process took time. Like, he realized that. So I think our journey, yes, Indonesia is a challenging context, but I believe that by coming back to our roots, the philosophy, I think talking about teacher education, I totally agree, Pak Asradi, that the teacher education is a very important context that we need to intervene, because if you don't understand the why, right, you become a teacher, then it will be just like thinking about very transactional. You know, you only think about, oh, what can you give me, how I can get benefit of that, instead of, I think teaching, I think, is more like a altruistic motivation, right? So it's more about how I can be of use of, especially to the students that I serve, right? I think this should be the fundamental value of every teacher, and in teacher education we need to strengthen this orientation, this disposition. I think Ki Hajar, like, very, you know, like, if you like, we use his term, right, berhamba pada sang anak, like he is an aristocrat, right? He's from the royal family, right? He's a Raden Mas, right? And then he became like just like ordinary person, and then he used the term berhamba as if he was like the child is like the top priority. That shows like where we should actually place our orientation as a teacher and educator. And yes, we have a lot of inspiration with Ki Hajar, and again, I would like to encourage everyone to read his writings. Yeah, Ki Hajar's writings. Don't read what people's writing about Ki Hajar. Use like his primary writing, then you will understand what Ki Hajar is all about. And I also want to share my own journey. It's not easy to understand Ki Hajar's writing, because Ki Hajar's writing is not like a book. He wrote pieces by pieces, so it's kind of responding to its context. So there is a social, cultural, historical context that people need also to understand why he was writing a different piece. But at the end of the day, you can see the connection and the values, the fundamental of his philosophy. But thank you once again, and I hope everyone is staying safe and well and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Iwan. Thank you for accepting our invitation to be part of this democratic education. Before the pandemic, I should tell everyone that the Asia Pacific Democratic Education Conference should be in Indonesia, ya Yaakov, ya. But pandemic happened, so okay. So it's good now we are still can connect to each other. So yes, Maro, thank you so much for having us. And
I would like to thank you. I'm so grateful. I'm sorry I did not respond immediately in the time of the questions. I had a problem in the other chat. I really appreciate it. I will put up the recording for tomorrow in case people from other time zones want to see this meeting. You really gave me hope, and I'm really grateful. Thank you so very much. Thank you.